Welcome again to Ham Radio Perspectives. I'm Quinn, K8QS.
And I'm Tom, W89TDD.
Well, gang, as the title says, 10 reasons why we miss MFJ. But before we get into those 10 reasons, Tom, I know you've been doing a little bit of research on the history of MFJ. Just tell us a little bit about the history.
Okay, well, it's kind of fascinating. Martin F. Jew, MFJ, started the business just tinkering around. He started a business manufacturing filters in a rented hotel room, paying 25 cents a day for leasing the room. It gradually got to the point where he had so much business that he started recruiting some of his students. He was an engineer at the University of Mississippi, I believe it was. And he started recruiting some of his students to do manufacturing for him. He gradually moved into a storefront, and that eventually led to more production, and that led to a bigger facility. At his marketing technique, especially through the pages of magazines, and you can address that, QST magazine probably supported half the magazine and ads from MFJ. So
with
the guy was a true entrepreneur.
Yeah, an entrepreneur and a businessman and a very fine engineer at the same time.
Exactly. And you got to hand it to him. He single-handedly, from the time he started the business to the time he closed the business a couple years ago, maintained control of the whole situation. He did his own designing. He did his own experimentation. He did his own product development. So he's a one-man show, and he was really successful at it. And it's really sad to see that all that hard work has now been just eliminated.
Yeah. And of course, difficulties in finding good employees to that would put the stuff together well without problems and all. We'll get into that a little bit. But at any rate, we want to honor Martin with this video, but we also want to do it with a little bit of humor along the lines of the 10 things that we most miss about MFJ, even though some of their products are still out there and can be bought here and there. So, Tom, why don't you start out?
All right. Number one, MFJ provided a way to develop diagnostic and repair skills on relatively simple equipment. You know, the final assembly was your job. You might need to tighten a screw or a cold solder joint. And it was like having a pre-assembled heath kit.
Yeah. In fact, the last product that I bought from him maybe 3 years ago was exactly in that situation. And so I opened it up and looked around, and I found what was wrong and fixed that, and it was working fine. And hey, so what? You know, that's the way life is with all kinds of things. But most of what he produced had elements that you could repair yourself.
Right.
And that's not so true anymore. Okay, the second reason that we miss MFJ is it was fun reading all of their ads in the ham magazines. QST, I can't remember, Tom, I counted the number of pages of MFJ ads in QST just a few years ago because we were thinking of doing a video specifically on the extent to which QST, as then a paper produced publication, was dependent on advertising revenue from MFJ. And I counted it up. It was over 20. But the interesting thing about the ads is that they were fun to read and look at because they had all of these different products jammed into the pages with a little bit of information about each one. And so you'd go through them and you'd go through them and you'd begin to wonder about something. Oh, should I buy that? Would that help me? Would that be a better antenna tuner than the other one I had? And the other thing I want to mention about this is the catalog that they put out. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know when I stopped getting the catalogs directly from MFJ, but for a while I was getting their catalogs, which had presumably most of their products in, although I think they've had somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 products overall over the lifetime of the company. But those were so much fun. And to dream about getting the different products that were in there Just amazing. And one of the things that I like to look at the most was whenever it said new, a new product. Martin had come up with some new take on something, and I'm going to mention one of those after you deliver the next point.
Okay. And number 3, Quinn, is MFJ was the only brand that nearly everyone used. I mean, it was a true universal ham radio product. Even hams who swore that they'd never buy MFJ again, they sometimes still own an antenna tuner, an SWR meter, or a mysterious black box with knobs and meters.
So you nailed the one that I was going to mention. When you look at MFJ products and you say which of their products comes close as a single product to being universal in the ham community, it was for a while the antenna analyzer. Man, everybody was buying that antenna analyzer. It was a genius product. And I still have one. I think I either gave or sold one to you of the original ones that are so great. I mean, I've used the fancy ones that'll do all the graphing and everything for you too. And I'm going to show you in a different video we're going to do about antennas, how I use that. But that antenna analyzer, man, that was just about a universal product. Okay, the fourth reason that we miss MFJ is that it was a great opportunity for newcomers into the hobby to buy easy to use accessories. So you could start making your shack look like a shack with stuff in it beyond just a receiver or transceiver or whatever. And so people bought it, put it in there. And man, I don't know if I've seen, Tom, a single page on QRZ of a shack that didn't have MFJ products hanging around there like elements on a Christmas tree.
So, and also in addition to that, Quinn, MFJ made some small QRP transceivers. I think they sold for under $300. So if you put together one of their transceivers, CW transceivers, I believe they also had a sideband one for about $300. I think
for the newcomer.
Single frequency. But you could put together a transceiver, a small antenna tuner, throw up a dipole, and for less than $400, a newcomer could get on the air and really start playing around with ham radio. You didn't need a gigantic budget to get involved in the hobby.
Excellent.
At number 5, MFJ products, considering that they were inexpensive, were pretty attractively packaged. They weren't Collins, but they were better than ICO. And you bought it because, one, it was cheaper than the competitors, and you keep it because it actually does the job eventually.
They were not ugly. No. And of course there was this consistent look.
The thing is, all their chassis and all their final assembly boxes were all made in-house too. So the manufacturing on it was very simple, but it was very useful. And it was very, let's leave it at simple.
Okay. The 6th reason why we miss MFJ is that their stuff was sold just about everywhere. So all of the major retailers and some minor retailers around the country carried MFJ. And then, of course, you had the catalog and you could buy direct. And I read in one of the interviews that you sent me that once they came out with one of the products, I can't remember which one, it may have been the antenna analyzer, and they started putting the 800 number in with it in their ads and all. They were overrun with orders.
Right.
That 800 number was just brilliant for them. And of course, they don't make as much money when they have to sell through the distributors, retailers, and so on. So that was good as well. Some of it may have been drop shipped, so that if you ordered a big heavy amplifier from one of the online retailers, it was actually shipped to you from MFJ. I don't know that one way or the other. But in any case, it was ubiquitous, just glorious. And even though sometimes the products were a little bit of a problem, the retailers stayed behind Martin
Mhm.
with the products.
And number 7, MFJ gave hams a universal subject to grumble about. People joke about MFJ, mighty fine junk, and so on and so on. But when they needed a weird, specific accessory priced right now, you know who they guessed first? Yeah,
MFJ.
MFJ.
You bet. Yeah, that's a very good point, Tom. And the grumbling is universal, right? And there are a lot of grumblers in the ham community about one thing or another. Maybe that's just where society is at now. I don't know, the social media and all. But so there was a lot of grumbling about MFJ, and it became kind of a joke where the grumbling was often said with some love behind it and appreciation for the company for what they were doing. So it was not really nasty, I think, in the vast majority of cases. The 8th reason why we miss MFJ is that their goodies were designed and manufactured, as Tom said, in the USA, right? In what,
Right.
Mississippi?
Starkville, Mississippi.
Yeah, amazing. In an era when there are so few ham products and accessories that are made in the U.S., I was trying to think, Tom, about this. Of course, you have Elecraft, but Elecraft is on the high end in terms of price.
Right.
You have Flex Radio, but they're on the high end in terms of price. Then you have Palstar from Ohio, and they have a broader range, but they don't have too many low-cost accessories. Even their watt meter is fairly pricey. Tech for a while was American made, but then they got into trouble. There's still some manufacturing going on there, apparently, with their amp and so on. But really, it's amazing that MFJ, over all of those years, was being designed, engineered, manufactured, repaired, and so forth in the USA. Martin made it go.
Right. And number 9, quit owning an MFJ product was like, a rite of passage. When you received your first QSL card in the mail.
Yeah.
Many ham's first piece of equipment was an MFJ. It was the common denominator between the Kenwood, Icom, and Yesu tribes.
Yes.
Right. But the instructions often felt like, connect wires, use knobs, good luck. Because half the learning comes from trial and error, or asking somebody on a repeater.
Yeah, or there were good Facebook groups and other chat groups and all where you could get in and ask questions about a particular MFJ product, especially the more popular ones. So I think you're right. There was a rite of passage there. And because these are, for the most part, inexpensive accessories, when that box would arrive and you would open it up and you could smell the metal, and the parts in there. It reminded me of the old days in Chicago, Tom, when we used to do night kits.
Right.
And you would open up a night kit and you start working on it, and you had that smell of the new kit. So our 10th and final reason why we miss MFJ is that the products actually worked quite well given the low price point. This was not expensive equipment. You agree, Tom?
I agree, and I think that was part of Martin's philosophy, is to keep it easily accessible and within the range of the average ham, who at that time was spending, pretty big bucks for the main equipment. But when they needed an accessory, MFJ was right there with the right product at the right price.
Yeah, and let me throw the amps in there too. They made some fine amps that were reasonably priced compared to some of the other manufacturers of RF amplifiers. Not talking about audio amplifiers per se, but RF. But their antenna tuners, I bet I've owned 3 or 4 different antenna tuners from them for different uses, and they always worked well. You didn't want to put in more power than what it was rated for, because those ratings meant something, unless you were looking for a little smoke to set off the fire alarm. Well, MFJ and Martin and his wonderful company. We miss the company. We're glad there's still some of the products out there. And we want this video to be our little way of honoring MFJ for the years of great service to the ham community. Thanks for tuning in, Ham Radio Perspectives. Please subscribe to this channel, and we'd love to have you make any comments down below, including comments of your appreciation for MFJ and Martin in particular as well. I'm Quinn, K8QS.
And I am Tom, WA9TDD.
73, everybody.